Are Deathmarks really meh? Time for another Necron Natter. Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, time for another chilled out natter about Necrons. And in this one I want to look at Deathmarks. Now this video has been inspired as such by an email that I've been having with someone who I was helping him out with his army list, and we got talking about Deathmarks, and he said that his gaming group basically think that Deathmarks are just meh. I defended them in the email, of course, because I thought they were pretty good Deathmarks myself, but it did make me think afterwards. I mean, are Deathmarks actually meh? So that's what I want to talk about. So I have my cup of coffee. Let's have a quick sip. So for me, Deathmarks fill a particular spot really well, that spot is what I would call the throwaway unit, which I have to be honest, I got from Fritz. So quite a long time ago, Fritz was obviously putting up videos, and one of the video types that he was putting up was about a throwaway unit. So basically, if you're playing a 2,000 point game, you spend between 100 and 200 points on a unit which is a total throwaway, a total distraction unit. And I felt that Deathmarks really fit that bill very well. You could have 5 Deathmarks, 90 points. You could have obviously 10, 180. Either way, both quite throwawayable in terms of a points amount. But is that right? Am I thinking along the right lines about that? So let's have a quick look at about the Deathmarks. So the Deathmarks basically are a Necron unit, an elite choice that has a disintegrator. What's it called? Synaptic disintegrator. Got the codex here because I can never remember their special name rules. So yeah, their gun basically is a rapid fire sniper gun. It's awesome because it means you can move and shoot, and you get the sniper special rule. Bearing in mind the sniper special rule is precision shots on 6s to hit, and AP2 on 6s to wound. So pretty nice, and of course they automatically wound on a 4+ regardless of your toughness. So right there, pretty decent gun. They also have a 3+ save, which is very nice when you consider maybe you're using quite warrior heavy list, which is a 4+ save. It's quite nice to have a 3+ save unit, especially if it's going to be out in the wilderness by itself, because the other special rule for the Deathmarks is that they can deep strike, and that's where they become quite prominent as a throwaway unit, something to have in reserve that's going to mess with your opponent's mind. Now they also have another special rule which really help with that messing of your opponent's mind, and that special rule is called Hunters from Hyperspace. So basically that means that when they deep strike, they can choose a unit, and for that turn that they deep strike in, they're able to wound that unit on 2s rather than 4s. Now that is really good. Now the old rules for Deathmarks, which arguably they were better in the old rules, you could wound that unit for the rest of the game on 2s. And now it's just the turn they deep strike. But even so, for a small 90 point unit, I've got this in reserve. It's going to be coming in, it's got effectively rending, it's AP2, it's going to deep strike anywhere on the table, and it's going to wound you on 2s. That's pretty good right there, to mess with your opponents. You know, they've got to think about that. Now they've also have some more special rules. How about that? So they have something called ethereal interception. And what that allows you to do is basically, if your opponent has some deep strikers as well, and they deep strike them in their turn, you are then able to immediately bring your death marks in. You don't have to roll for them or anything. Bring them in your opponent's turn. Deep strike them in, and then after your opponent's moved, you're able to shoot the death marks. Also using, obviously, the auto wound on 2 rule. So if your opponent has a deep striking unit, which is quite a big threat, when he deep strikes down, obviously you can deep strike down as well. Now, yes, of course, there is the scatter. They do scatter. But even if you scatter outside of 12 inches, you've still got a 24-inch gun. Ideally, you want to be in rapid fire range, of course. So, really, really good special rules there. Obviously, a lot of people say, well, why would you want to come in your opponent's turn? Bearing in mind that after you've shot in your opponent's turn, when it's then your turn, you're not able to shoot. You, however, can run. But, yeah, why would you use that? Well, again, it's playing with your opponent's mind, because just having that option, having that ability, could potentially make your opponent think twice about deep striking units that maybe they wouldn't, they wouldn't normally not deep strike it. In other words, might change their mind, might change their battle plans. And that is how death marks, I think, work really, really well as a distraction unit. I call it a throwaway unit. I suppose the real name would be a distraction unit. Something that's going to play with your opponent's mind. And when they come down, they probably won't actually do much. They might do much. And if you've got 5 guys, 90 points, you get them in rapid fire range, that's 10 shots, you're hitting on 3s and then you're wounding on 2s. That's pretty good, if you bring them down maybe next to a bike squad, toughness 5 bike squad, you're going to be wounding them on 2s. And then of course if you get any 6s to wound, that's rending, it's potentially going to take away their saves, and might have a jinx save or a cover save or a vulnerable save, whatever. But the potential is there to mess with your opponent's mind for a mere 90 points. I think that is really, really good. Now, I think looking at the death marks from a non-throwaway unit point of view, I think they can still work really, really well. So let's have a look at that. So let's imagine that we take more death marks than 5. I would say a number between 7 and 10, but in this case, let's just say 10 death marks. Now, 10 death marks deep striking in is going to give you, if you're in rapid fire range, 20 shots, which is a good amount of shots, the potential to do a good amount of damage. Now, what I've been using the death marks in very successfully in a non-throwaway unit way is when I'm taking the destroyer cult formation, because in that destroyer cult formation you have to take an a destroyer lord, and the destroyer lord, yes, you could put them in with your destroyers, but he's almost wasted there, and yes, you could put him in maybe with other units, you could make warriors have preferred enemy, for example, stick him in with warriors, possibly attach him with wraiths, but of course he doesn't move the same distance as wraith, he only moves 12 as opposed to 6, but this has the potential. But on the whole, there's not too many great places to put the destroyer lord, but if you put the destroyer lord with the death marks, that becomes a whole different ball game. You can bring your death marks down in your opponent's turn if you happen to have the opportunity. You can bring them down, and then you can obviously shoot all of your death marks. Now, if you come down in your opponent's turn, then in your turn, of course, the death marks aren't able to shoot. But the destroyer lord, he can break off of the death marks, and then he can go off and he can assault units by himself. Now, if you gear up that destroyer lord, maybe with a void reaper, he all of a sudden becomes very, very dangerous. So he definitely has a lot of potential. Now, if you deep strike in your turn, and you obviously can't actually then assault or anything, but what you can do is obviously take the fire, because your opponent's going to shoot at your death marks. you know, a good chunk of your Deathmarks will probably go down, depending on how much shooting comes in. But probably, I would imagine, more often than not, your Destroyer Lord will survive a volley of shots. You know, there's going to be a lot of Deathmark bodies in there, and then of course you're probably going to gear up your Destroyer Lord with a 2+ save or the invulnerable save, etc. So your Destroyer Lord is probably going to survive, and then he's free in your next turn to go off and destroy vehicles, take them into the big nasty creatures. I mean, my Destroyer Lord with the Void Reaper did incredibly well against Ace Face's Storm Surges. That Void Reaper really awesome, unless of course you get stomped out. But there, you know, it has the potential. So I think the Deathmarks certainly have a very good place in your list. And I haven't even mentioned the shenanigans which potentially you could do. Now, I've never done this, don't 100% know if it actually is legal, but if you read the Hunters from Hyperspace Special Rule, it basically says that during the player turn in which the unit arrives from Deep Strike, all the shooting attacks wound on 2s. So the shenanigans that I've heard about is taking a cryptic and then giving that cryptic the Veil of Darkness. So you can put that Deathmarks unit in reserve, you can Deep Strike in, you can use the Hyperspace Special Rule once, and then later in the game, maybe in your next turn, you can then use the Veil of Darkness, where you pull the units off of the table and you re-deep strike them back in somewhere else, and then you're deep striking back in. So then you can reuse the Hyperspace Rule, wounding on 2s. So I've heard about that. As I said, I'm not 100% sure that that is all correct, but I believe it is. So I think there are definitely a lot of potential, or there is a lot of potential for Deathmarks. I certainly don't think they're meh. I think they've got lots and lots of fun elements, useful elements and good elements. Now, yes, potentially a top-end tournament player would probably dismiss Deathmarks because they'll be honing in on their points. They'll be trying to make the absolute best they can from their points, taking out any randomness, and let's face it, a deep striking unit is random. So I know a lot of top end tournaments don't like to use deep strike unless they've got a special rule where they don't scatter. Also, if you're deep striking in, of course you've got to allow for reserve rolls. Even, you know, you have the opportunity to come in your opponent's turn if they deep strike, but not all of your opponents are going to deep strike. So potentially your Deathmarks may not come out till turn 4. So you've got all of those random elements, which I think potentially is where, as I said, a top end tournament player would probably say, yeah, Deathmarks there, meh. But I actually think there is a lot of room in your list for Deathmarks, and of course they are part of the Decorion. So you've got that 4+ RP roll if you take them in the Decorion. So a 3+ save, 4+ RP roll, they can deep strike in your turn, your opponent's turn. They have rapid fire, sniper guns, AP2 with 6s. They have the potential to mess with your opponent. You don't have to deep strike them, you can just put them on reserve. Of course you'll lose your special rule, wounding on 2s. But I think on the whole, a very solid elite choice. So let's hear what you think. What do you think of Deathmarks? Have I hit the nail on the head? Have I missed something? Is there something extra? Any more tactics, different tactics that I haven't talked about here? Let's get a discussion going, as always, on these videos, because what I'm really hoping is people get on this video, they watch the video, and then they read all of your comments in the boxes below, and pick up loads and loads of really good tips, because we're here to share Necron tactics with each other. So I look forward to reading your comments. Thanks for watching, as always, and I'll see you in the next video.